Dearest, gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, whose current chapter of her story takes place in Ohio. Settle down onto your favorite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favorite characters.
If you are not up to date with season 3, please go and watch that first and pop back once you are all caught up, as this podcast will contain spoilers.
In the last episode, we finished our discussion of side stories for episode 1. We decided we would save themes for after the first half, but really, this decision was because we were so excited to talk Polin again. We could not wait to talk about those marriage lessons. As always, we love a good stroll down tangent lane, so I have given up saying what we will fit into this episode. I suppose only Hyacinth can know for sure with her seer ways.
Indeed, Hyacinth knows all. And just a side note that we finally have both settled our recording issues with our microphones, so hopefully from now on we will have nice and clear content for you all. Now we must make haste into today's episode. So in this episode, we start out with our first scene with Penelope, Varley, and Ray looking at Penelope's new wardrobe, which is a soft mint tone, which is quite beautiful because we are now seeing her transition from those Featherington colors and slowly moving closer towards the Bridgerton color palette.
Yes, and I will have to say, of probably every single dress this season, this one is my absolute favorite.
There is actually a dress that I was watching a compilation video, and I will have to find it and post it to our Ladies Bridgerton group chat on Facebook, because it is a compilation video of every dress that Penelope wore in the season. And there's one in particular that I am absolutely in love with, and it's like, it looks like the background of our images on our Zoom call here, where it's this blue with these purple
appliques.
Not appliques, it's kind of like blended into the dress, but it's really, really beautiful. And we see,
is that the one from when Colin and Violet come over to look at the room for the wedding breakfast?
Yes,
that her dress there
yes,
is gorgeous.
It
that
is beautiful.
Probably,
and
yeah,
for some reason, like, it didn't really stand out to me in the moment, because obviously we were so focused on what was happening between Penelope and Colin that I didn't really pay much attention. And then it reminded me of a dress that we see Portia actually wear later on, and it was quite interesting that Portia is now mimicking her daughter's wardrobe. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. But I absolutely love, like, that we are starting to see these beautiful soft color palettes on Penelope, because she does have very fair coloring. And obviously, as much as we love her in yellow because it symbolizes who she is,
sunshine.
It is sunshine. And so I love that for her, but I also understand that it is not necessarily the most complementary to her skin tone, unless you are looking at putting her in those. And I hope that they do it next season. I hope that we start seeing her in some muted soft yellows, because that is what would suit her skin tone, but still keep true to who she is.
Well, that's why in season 2, like, my favorite dresses and the ones we have really important Polin scenes in season 2, both dresses are a paler yellow. It's not in that mustard range. It's more very like spring sunshine kind of yellow. And the one like with the daisies on it is my absolute favorite. And then the one she wore at the wedding with the embroidery across the bodice. I absolutely love that dress too. And those are the two, honest to goodness, if, I find a journal entry talking about yellow anything, I know it's because of those two dresses.
I really want to see her in this new silhouette though, with those chiffony, beautiful soft sleeves with a yellow palette, and she will just look like the epitome of sunshine, like a ray of sunshine coming out of her. So I love, and Varley is so complimentary, and because we don't really see a whole lot of Penelope and Varley in the first 2 seasons. So to get to see Varley really showing her sign of approval and just supporting Penelope in this moment and helping build her up, because she's had a whole life of being torn down. And, the only comments that she got from her mum with her glowed up look, you would think that her mum would have been, oh, well, look at my daughter, she's so beautiful, upon her arrival within Breeball in the last episode. But instead, oh, it's melancholy. It's not complimentary.
And she even struggles later. I mean, because she's
Yes.
absolutely a narcissistic parent.
Yes.
When they walk into the wallflower ball and she goes, I've never liked that twinning on you.
Yes, that's
but
the one.
It starts with the slap and then the rub, like such a narcissistic
It can
parent
never be
comment.
a compliment. It's a compliment sandwich.
Sandwiched in with some kind of negative something.
I love that because Varley, I mean, realistically back then, the head of the household very much held a kind of maternal figure for those children as well. They are a female figure that have been in their lives their whole entire lives. And you can tell that Varley's been with the family forever. So she has that kind of respectful maternal role with those girls. And so to have Varley building Penelope up in this moment, I thought was really beautiful. And of course, Ray is basically like learning from Varley in these moments because we know as viewers, we know that she's about to become the head of her own household. So it's quite beautiful to see.
She's moving on up.
She's moving on up.
Well, and we're in the episode, but we'll be talking about that later. I think that's the bribe.
Yes.
That is the bribe.
Yes.
You are going to get to be the housekeeper in our house. Just let me have some time alone with my woman.
And I love, so as we've talked about in the past, Lady Whistledown, when she's reading over, she's narrating to the listener, the timing in which she begins these narrations is always incredibly important. And I'm not going to read the whole Lady Whistledown like I do, because I usually leave those for the side episodes, but I will discuss that in this moment, she says, as looking over Penelope in her new look, and she's looking into the mirror, she says, that which some may dismiss as common rock, time reveals to be precious stone. And that was quite pointed because in the last episode, we had the queen nearly choose Penelope as her precious stone, as her sparkler by another name, in which I talked about her favorite gemstone is a emerald, and that is exactly as Penelope was dressed.
Yeah. And I think that because we know she is Lady Whistledown, this is absolutely in that moment where as she's trying to find who she is, because now she's taking control of her life and she's trying to figure out who she is, having that outside validation is important. Like, it's ultimately she works through that and she gets to the point where what she feels about herself is what's important. But as somebody who has lived under the negative validation for so long of her mother and her sisters and everything, to have that positive validation from someone who is like family is very important. So that Whistledown line is probably really her inner monologue. She never thought much of herself, and now she's seeing herself in a different light. That's what's important, is because her confidence, as much as we have the lines of Colin helped her find confidence, he didn't teach her nothing. Anyways. He didn't teach her anything. He just wanted to hang out with her. But she gained her own confidence in the fact that having somebody love her in the way he did gave her confidence, because it took hearing, living in this home where everything she hears is negative for all these years, like, to start hearing positive things is transformative.
But it also takes a long time to actually believe the things that are being said when you've been told something your whole life. And then someone says something different, even if they have the purest of intentions, it takes time for you to learn that they are speaking a truth.
Well, and that's why I think that Varley telling her the looking glass does not lie is so important, because foreshadowing, when she's standing in front of the mirror with Colin, we know as book readers that Penelope is able to believe him when he says she's beautiful. She feels it for the first time. That's the line in the book. She truly felt beautiful for the first time in her life because Colin said so, and Colin never lies.
Yeah.
And we know show Colin's not the same. He's crafty. He doesn't necessarily outright lie. I mean, there's been a few times in season 1, season 2 where he came very close to it being an actual lie.
Crafty with the truth.
He omits when it's necessary. Like, I was anywhere and everywhere, not wanting to give away details. He wants to protect. His goal is to protect what he feels like it is not safe to say in the moment. And I specifically said it in that way because of the end of season 2. And when he's standing there and he's telling her all these things and she's looking in the mirror, we harken back to Varley saying the looking glass does not lie. So the looking glass is showing her, but it's showing her Colin saying these things to her, so she's able to believe them.
The dictionary definition of a looking glass is opposite to what is normal or expected. And that very much harkens to the fact that Penelope does not expect to be seen as beautiful, or, it's not her norm. She has not been told this
Right.
any time in her life, so it's not her norm. So the point of Barley saying looking glass is really quite beautiful. It's quite a beautiful moment.
Yeah. And remember that definition, because the definition for looking glass becomes important again in episode 4.
Yes, this episode is actually laced with a lot of symbolism, and I'm just going to put it out there now. This is very, very, like, I've gone through my notes for this episode, and this is very likely going to be a 4-parter. So fans, please prepare yourself for a very long journey with us.
We've decided the kiss is its own episode.
Oh, it has to be its own episode, because we'll have 20 minutes of us just fangirling over it, and then we'll have to start talking about it.
For
and
real.
We are known as the Tangent Queens for a reason, because we can make a 3-minute.
We are the Tangent Queens.
Young and
that's not. I gotta look up my lyrics sometime, and I'll just bust it out. But yeah,
I think we could make a whole song out of it.
I could.
We'll just become like Nicola, and we'll just become like internet sensations for our singing. I said no girl ever who cannot hold a tone to save her life.
I speak for yourself. I can.
No, but I was saying this girl can't. What is his name?
You almost said it like my mom used to. My mom used to make us sing for everybody, and she's like, I need you to sing for everybody. I love your voice. She goes, I can't even carry a tune if it was in a bucket.
So I would be the equivalent of the romancy Weird Al Yankovic, where he just comes out with the most nonsense lyrics to songs that already exist. Like, I am the Regency romance expert of Weird Al Yankovic. I don't know if you know who that is.
Like, I do. Weird Al Yankovic?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you kidding me? I love his Hamilton polka.
Okay. I thought it was going to be Madonna.
Up on him. No, I grew up on him. Fat. Oh my gosh, I love Weird Al. Anyways,
but that's where my
white and nerdy.
That's where my enthusiasm for making up ridiculous lyrics to already existing songs comes from.
And I'm known for it. Like, I mean, you and Kay already know. Like, I threw in new lyrics to Dancing Queen for Tangent Queens. So Looking Glass, that is my favorite dress. The reason I love it is because she has been screwed by her mother and where the bodice is placed. I mean, where the bodice is placed and everything to not accentuate her assets. And when she is walking in that park, which we're about to talk about, so that's why I'm bringing it up now.
We will talk about that in a second, because we are literally, we are on the horse. We are galloping towards the promenading scene. So we have our favorite Bridgerton mixed trio. When I say mixed, I mean mixed gender trio. I really quite enjoy scenes where we have Benedict, Eloise, and Colin together, because they are such, I mean, I love the Bridgerton bros together, but Benedict, Eloise, and Colin is always just comedy gold.
Oh my gosh. I watched season 1. Have you been to a farm, Elle? Like that scene over and over, and pausing and seeing all the facial expressions, and Benedict just pop him upside the head. Gold. The
Take
whole
our
thing.
sticks out. Like, honestly, we need to come up with a doc of the best one-liners or the best like wee scenes kind of in Bridgerton, like the iconic moments. We've got, taking our sticks out. We've got you must make haste. We've got gallop along. What else? Just basically anytime that Anthony is ever talking, or shall I say screaming out flower names.
Lilacs! Forget me nots.
He is so unhinged. It makes me so happy.
Well, we're not even at that episode yet, but Kate, oh my gosh. Like, I can't even be Kate. Like I
married this scene together, and the scene where she says our marriage is not perfect, and he's like, what do you mean? And she's like, do you not recall you yelling out flowers?
That scene is hilarious because he's the dude that's always coming down on Colin, right? Like he's always teasing him, lecturing him, whatever. So when he sees her come in, like the smell of fermented fruit, blah, 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 and he is just so proud of his wife. Like, yes, I have a partner.
Get him.
I have a partner. Get him. And then she goes, you think our marriage is perfect? And then he's like,
hey, wait a minute. We're picking on him, not me.
Yes. Pick on him, not me.
And speaking of picking on, that is exactly what Benedict and Colin are doing to Eloise. And we will talk about this trio in the side stories, but because this part particularly marries straight into the scene with Colin and Penelope promenading together. We kind of do need to talk a little bit about that first, and then talk about Colin and Penelope scene, because there's so much to unpack with this promenading session.
Right. And I think that for the three of them, the most important thing is we have Benedict is calling out Eloise. Eloise is calling out Colin. And then Colin calls out Benedict.
Both? Well, no, you know what? So I just rewatched that scene, and I thought that Colin is specifically calling out Eloise, as in, didn't you promise? And then I look at Benedict's face as he said it, and it was Benedict who took offense, but I think it was actually aimed at both of them, not one. So he says, didn't you promise Anthony that you were going to give the marriage mart a fair go this season? And that harkens back to the conversation that they had at Mondrick's bar, where he's like, right, but we've not
seen we've not seen Anthony talk to Eloise at all, and everybody's avoiding Eloise because of what happened last season. So I took that totally as Benedict is coming down on Eloise, like, what's up with you? I do not understand this you. Like, this is confusing to me. And then she is like, deflect. No, everybody's staring at Colin. I'm not the most changed. And then Colin comes in to protect Eloise in a way. Like, they're not on the same page either. But I think because it's such a sibling thing to do, where you have one picking on one, that one is like picking on the other one, and then that one's like, no, I'm going to pick on you now, because they're all trying to.
It reminds me of the Spider-Man scene with Into the Spider-Verse, where they're all pointing at each other.
Pointing at each other, right. And he's just like, didn't you tell Anthony you were going to give the season a try? And Benedict's face is like,
but to be honest, when up until this week, I thought he was aiming that comment at Eloise, because she's the one who's supposed to be on the marriage mart, not at Benedict. And he's like, don't look at me.
And I think that that's what was to think, because they're not on the same page. And I think she kind of thinks it comes that way too, because she's not looking at Colin. Yes. But Benedict's reaction is absolutely, you're right.
But that was one of the foreshadowing moments for it being Benedict's season next. Colin's like, my season's now, but you're up next, buddy.
You have to give it a try.
And that's the thing. And then, because we had our two siblings that they were like, okay, one of these two. We all knew as fans it was going to be one of those two seasons next. And that's the moment where we all thought, oh, maybe it could be Eloise. And then, so we think, oh, maybe he's talking to Eloise at this moment, but actually it was Benedict. So this was one of those really beautiful foreshadowing moments where they're like dingling, it could be Eloise. No, it's Benedict.
It's Benedict.
It's Benedict.
When he sees, after Benedict is all like, ugh, and then he sees Penelope ahead and he's like, hey, I'll catch you later. Then Benedict is like, oh, like, I've got to do this myself.
I've got to put up with Eloise.
And then we see Elle notice them.
Clock. Yeah, she clocks it.
If you watch Benedict's face in certain things where he knows somebody doesn't want to reveal something, or he knows somebody doesn't want,
he's really astute.
Yes.
He is very.
So he's like purposely not looking, but he's like, oh, okay. But the foreshadowing of Eloise going, let's go see if those ladies have a fan, because I have a feeling it's going to get rather warm.
Yes. It's going to get hot here.
I was like, oh, you think so? It's going to get warm.
It's going to get steamy. Okay, I'm going to put it out here already. And I know that we are jumping ahead 2 episodes, well, like probably a bajillion podcast episodes at this point, but I'm going to say it right now. We very much do not believe the lie that Benedict says when him and Anthony are questioning Colin after the betrothal. And he says, did you have any idea? And Benedict's like, I had no idea. Like, that is an outright lie.
He's like, did you know? Can you believe that? I did not know that. That is what the closed captioning says, but I'm watching his lips and I'm not exactly sure that's what he says. But no.
We will dig into the why, but for now we will just say we didn't believe him.
No. There's too many times that Colin's like, dude, I'm out. And he's like, okay. And just walks off.
He sees Penelope and he's like, yeah, that's fair. That's your girl.
Yeah.
Go see your girl.
He is so excited about their engagement. He runs in the house. I mean,
because he's watched it happen. He's watched it unfold. I saw
a TikTok or a reel or something where somebody pulled out, like, when they walk into Daphne's ball and they come down the stairs and they both say, like, whatever they say to each other. And then they go to turn. Like, he sees Colin see Penelope and he's like, he just turns his head like,
Yeah.
Go get her, dude.
I'm chop liver, so I don't exist.
Right. Like, you don't even have a brother anymore. So, it's like I've disappeared.
Colin starts to walk up to Penelope in this moment. And now we get to talk about the dress, because you and I both have big feels about this dress. And for me, the back, there's these cute, adorable little ruffle. It's almost like a bodice, but on the back of her dress, which almost looks like fins in a way. I don't know how to describe it.
That's on a lot of dresses this season. If you look at a lot of the debutantes, like especially like at the wedding breakfast, a few of them have them. But yeah, that style, but on it slims her down.
Yes.
And the way the dress, like, and then her hips flare out.
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, aside from him chasing her out of every room at every ball ever, also clock how many times Colin chooses to walk behind this woman. There's a reason. He's watching her walk for real.
Oh yeah. I mean, fair point, because like the ruffles on the back, it really harkens into that romantic rom-com era that they are leaning into this season, because it's like her outfits are very sweet. They're very romantic. They're very, very, very princess-esque.
Yeah.
And
ethereal kind of.
Yes.
Very flowy, very gauzy. Yeah. Very.
You know what I would love to see? I wish that the masquerade ball, I mean, we'll talk about this in an episode, but I really wish that they would do a Greek gods kind of theme to it, so that we could see Penelope dressed up as Aphrodite.
Well, and it never said in the books what she went to the masquerade as. It just said that she was able to be a little more bold because she had a mask. So I don't think it actually gave what her costume was. We only know,
but it leaves it completely open for her to go as Aphrodite.
And I think she should, because and we're gonna get to talk about the market. In the market, I think she came off very much Greek goddess, like her look.
Have you read my notes? For the market,
I read your notes.
There's so many notes.
There's so much, so many Greek references.
So I started looking at the bus.
Greece,
yeah.
So.
I started looking at the bus. I started looking at the flowers. I looked into everything. But let's talk about the promenade.
Let's promenade. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about why the promenade is important. Okay, and I'm going to say this because we know that there's not a historical advisor that I found on IMDb as being credited. And I'm going to say
they do have one. They had the original one in season 1 and halfway through season 2 who quit. And they said that they brought on, I've seen an interview where they said they brought on a new historical advisor. And even that advisor said, be cautious with how you play certain things, because you are really starting to, and then they have the
push
whole, well, it's fantasy, it doesn't matter. But even this new fantasy advisor, even this new historical advisor.
They want it to be, they want it to be fantasy, but I receive a lot of information regarding Regency stuff through the lens of Regency etiquette, because it was so specific. Like Benedict says, you can't have a whole conversation with Benedict talking about the rules are here to churn the marriage mart, and then totally have the rules mean
disregard
nothing
them
in other scenes. And this scene is so important, and this is why, like, I started my TikTok after the first half, because I 100% believe that Colin already knew he wanted to marry this woman. And he was putting things in place. Specifically, they are in the park. Like, people went to promenade in the park to publicly announce,
yes,
without words, but with actions, you're going to walk with the person that you are courting, openly courting. So by him walking up to her and them walking together, and you can watch both of them when they first start walking together, before they truly really start talking and they know they're side by side.
Yes,
both of them are clocking, watching.
And you know what I've just thought about? The fact, think back to season 1, let's form an attachment, or appear to form an attachment, because if others know that you have a duke after you, they will all follow suit. And although Colin is a third brother, he is still a very respected, very sought after gentleman in the town. And so we actually see a few people approach Penelope and whatnot after this point, because someone's actually openly courting her now, rather than just dancing with her at balls and that. Now he's seen as openly courting her, and now the other men are flocking for the first time in multiple years.
Yes, but I don't think that's the goal.
It's not his goal, but it's the other men's goal.
Yeah, I think that everybody, I mean, literally the whole ton just about has assumed they've had an understanding for a long time, just because of some of the lines, and you and I were talking about those before we started recording, but just because of some of the lines that people gave, like Lady Danbury saying, anyone who questions their match is a fool. Like, everybody's seen it, guys. I
think everyone thought that they were secretly engaged.
And that's why we have the secret engagement as a side story, because it's very viable that people in the ton would have believed they were secretly engaged all this time. And they couldn't announce because of all of the scandal that happened with the Featheringtons, and then her father dying, and then the scheme with Jack and the botched wedding. Like, there was so much going on that they'd be like, of course they waited until now.
Yes.
And now there's reason, like, nobody knows that Dundas is after, well, besides the Cowpers, but nobody knows that Dundas is after Portia. So it seems like okay for them to finally go public.
Yes.
Like, nobody questions it. But they're both looking like, who's watching us walk? And you can see the looks on their faces. Like, Penelope looks more trepidatious. She's a little more nervous about it. Like, would Colin want to be seen with me? But he's looking around like,
she's concerned about his reputation as, being seen with that Featherington girl.
That Featherington girl. But he's proud.
He is.
When he's looking around, he's like watching.
Yeah. And then
you only see later. Yeah, you only see his insecurity when she says, so how should we begin? You know, is there a book I might read on charm? And he says, are you sure you want my help after what Lady Whistledown wrote? Yes. And you can, I saw this in your notes, so I'll let you talk about that. But that's when his insecurity comes out. It's not when he's walking with her.
Yes.
When he knows people are watching him walk with her. It's when he has to directly ask her if she still wants to continue.
Yeah. And so, like, when he reads the column that Lady Whistledown has wrote, and Eloise asks, how are you? And he goes, well, I do not care what Lady Whistledown thinks about me. I only care about blah, blah, blah. But in this moment, that when Colin approaches Penelope and they finally start speaking, you can tell that Colin is really pensive, and he eventually admits to Penelope being surprised at still wanting his help. And you can tell in that moment that he is actually quite deeply hurt by what Lady Whistledown has written. And Lady Whistledown in the ton is law. She is like the Queen's law, and anyone who writes badly, and think of it this way, Lady Whistledown wrote badly about Eloise. Penelope and Eloise stop being friends. He does not know why. So he could be possibly wondering, well, Lady Whistledown has now written badly about me. Is Penelope going to stop talking to me as well? Because otherwise she could be tarnished with the same.
Well, and we already have that is probably his thought process, because in season 2, after the botched wedding, when Portia treated them like dogs, by the way, when Portia treated them like dogs, and Colin's looking at Penelope like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, that whole time. And then Portia walks away and Penelope walks up and she says, we're very sorry. Like, she's apologizing for the whole family for what they're going through. And then Portia's like, you know, don't take up too much of their time, Penelope, come along. Like, it's obvious that Portia would not let her associate with them or talk to them. And like we already know, in her home, she's like, I want to go and see Eloise. I'm sure she's hurt. And she goes, you will not set foot in that house. Yes. So I think Colin was pretty worried. Like, she met me, but maybe she met me to say, I don't want to do this now.
Because I think that was why he was looking so pensive, is not necessarily what Lady Whistledown thinks about him, but the implications of, will Penelope also think that, because he values Penelope's opinion so highly that he's like, I could not stand to think that she would ever see me this way. And it genuinely hurts his feelings. He is way more sensitive and way more emotional than people give him credit for.
Well, and we're officially seeing, because it is his season, we are really seeing his sensitivity, because, and those of us who, I mean, show Colin is a lot more, he's presented as a highly sensitive person in his season. And you can see that, like, there's snippets of it in season 1 and season 2. Like, he genuinely loves children. Yes. He's always like holding a baby, waving at a baby, cooing at a baby. Like, he loves kids, and how he is with his younger siblings, and, you know, just the things like that. You can see, like, for him to have that relationship with them, he had to be more sensitive, because even though Antony has a similar similar relationship with Hyacinth and Gregory, more so Hyacinth. Gregory's starting to get a different facet of his brother towards the end of season 2, but he absolutely is more fatherly, authoritarian.
Yeah.
Whereas you can tell Colin is like our playmate, right?
Yes.
He's that brother. Like he was, and at some point we're gonna have to get into like the thought process of why he is the way he is and so sensitive, and he feels so responsible for everybody's happiness and comfort and everything else, and talk about the dynamic after Edmund died, because we didn't get flashbacks, folks, so we had to piece that together ourselves using psychology and order of children and where would other people be in their lives. So I just don't know if we go into that starting now, or if we go into that in the second half, because he really goes through that arc in the second half of the season of dealing with those inner feelings. And
I think this will most likely be bonus episodes where we just look at one character at a time.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I mean, Tangent Queens, we need a whole episode per person. And speaking of Let's Gallop Along, where Colin decides to give his first marriage lesson, and he massively overestimates Penelope's abilities. And in the next scene, I'm going to call upon you, my Regency expert, because I do not have a lot of knowledge on this. I have watched a wee video from Nicola Coughlin on it, but Nicola approaches with Colin 3 gentlemen, and I only know who one of them is, but the other ones are definitely older gentlemen and don't look of the age that Penelope would be courting them potentially. So I think that's probably is the middle one Wilding?
Middle one's Wilding, yes.
I thought it was okay. You know that I am not fantastic with faces, and I for some reason mix up Wilding and Fife all the time, but I'm getting better at it, and I'm gonna create my infograph sheet to help me. But the middle one's Wilding.
We keep saying that. We're going to create our sheet.
I've started.
I've
started. So the middle one's Wilding. But
3.5 seconds before we recorded this podcast, she started it.
Look, I'm a busy gal. So we have Wilding, and then we have 2 gentlemen who are most likely not even on the marriage mark. They're probably married or old or whatever. And I think he chose them specifically because he's like, okay, there's only one person who's really of marriage prospect here. And I don't think Penelope's ever going to marry him. And he's a joke. Penelope's never going to be interested in him. So these are good men to choose for her to practice on, and practice does she ever.
Okay, and so first thing I want to say, another foreshadowing moment, is when she says that Lady Whistledown could not be more wrong, and he says, "You're right. Eventually, she's going to get caught, and we will dance on the day of her demise."
And what does Happy Colin do? He dances.
Yeah.
It was just the funniest moment. I love that.
But that's exactly what happens when she outs herself, and technically Whistledown's dead because it's Penelope. Yeah, he takes her to the dance floor. So that was foreshadowing. So you said everything, because we're playing Colin's figuring everything out versus Patty Cannon, which is he came into this season having a plan. And this is very much every reason why I believe it's a plan. First of all, public place. Second of all, they're promenading. He's walking beside her. They're very publicly walking together. He purposely comes up and introduces her to them.
Look at my mate.
So yes, look at who I'm with. I'm sure Miss Featherington. He doesn't, when you see...
He is presenting it to her in a way that, hey, I'm teaching you marriage lessons, but he is presenting it to the Ton in a way of, I am courting this woman.
Yes, because when you look at how Francesca's mother introduces Lord Petrie to her, the cellist.
Yes.
She says who he is, and she gives a couple of pieces of information about him because she's trying to make a connection between the two of them. Yeah. When you see Lady Danbury introduce Lady Keswick or her other friends, all their names, and she doesn't have to say they're widows, but she says that about Lady Keswick at the church. Lady Keswick, she is a widow, like you've lost your spouse. So there's always, when you're trying to make a connection between two people that you think would match, you give a piece of information. It's walking with her, promenading with her, everybody's looking. He had no way of planning this, but I feel like their outfits very much matched each other very well.
In all the scenes in this episode, they are very much a cohesive pair, the way that they are dressed.
The market too. I think her pale creamy, and there's like little pinks in it in the browns, and he's wearing, I think they matched up really well there too. But he purposely walks up to a group of men. The one dude is way older. The other dude is a little bit older, like way too old for Penelope's age. Except, you know, Colin is trying to find, like, well, he's telling her he's trying to find her an eligible husband that she would make a good match for her. With. He's not gonna put her with Lord Greer, people. So, and then there's Wilding, and he knows Wilding is part of the Lord Squad, and we know how Colin feels about the Lord Squad. Just saying. Yes. He hangs out with them. They're okay to hang out with and go and have a few drinks with, but he's not ever invited a single one of them to his home. Just saying.
No. And I think there are people who you have in your life, acquaintances for different purposes, but they are not an all-purpose friend. There is Penelope to Eloise as an all-purpose friend, whereas these people are...
He knows the Lord Squad is his friends of convenience. Like, they're people he can talk to on the side of a ballroom when he doesn't want to be seen with other women, which I think is that we don't start seeing Colin really hang out with the Lord Squad until I think he's really understanding his developing feelings for Penelope, and he doesn't want to be seen with women. And that starts in season 2. And now in the 3rd season, when you always see him at a ball, he is on the sidelines. He's talking to the Lord Squad. He's always with a male or a family member.
And that is etiquette. Is if you were a single male who is not married, who's not engaged, who's not attached, you are expected to ask women to dance. And if he is talking with other gentlemen, then that obligation is no longer expected because he is occupied. But if he is just standing
in conversation,
if he is just standing around, then the expectation is that he's going to show single women onto the dance floor. That is the expectation. And the other part I wanted to ask you about, and so we have Penelope promenading with Colin, and she goes up to he takes her up to these 3 gentlemen and introduces, and the poor girl. So Nicola Coughlan has talked a little bit about this, but I've already forgotten it. The very insistent flapping, and I do mean flapping of the fan. I thought that meant something more so than what she was intending it to, because there is an entire art of fan.
There is an art of fan, and I don't know the whole art, but that is why Wilding says you appear discomposed, because she's not using any kind of correct language.
I thought that because I've just watched Enola Holmes Part 2, I think it was, and they explain the fanning in that one, but they don't explain that particular move. But I think it was when you were very avidly moving your fan like that, it was meant to be something sexual or something of that nature. I have to look it up, but I do recall it being quite forward, and I don't think that's what Penelope intended at all. But the fact that Nicola Coughlan has done a interview video where she talks about the art of the fan, obviously she is aware of it herself, and I think it was an intentional piece, not that she was intending it for that purpose, but because she just panicked and just...
Fanning quickly.
Yes.
Fanning quickly.
Yes.
Equals... I am engaged. I just looked it up on Waukesha County Museum. It's the language of the fan.
Thank you, because I was like, there was no reason for Nicola to specifically do an interview where she explains the different acts of the fan, but she didn't explicitly state what that move was. And I'm thinking, why would she know what each fan movement was unless it was put in purposefully? So obviously this is done purposely. This is definitely a foreshadowing. I'm so glad I asked you about this.
Yeah. And so when he introduces her, he does not give any, what they called it in Bridget Jones, thoughtful attributes, thoughtful tips about her for the gentleman. Yeah. They just said, Miss Featherington, and that was it. He shut up. He just left it at that. And then everything. And he actually sent her in with very little instruction, telling her, you know how to bat your eyelashes and flutter your fan. Like most men, and he goes, men are really simple beings. And that line to me, it's like, I don't know. And this is what made me start thinking, like, he's setting her up. Like, this he doesn't want her to be successful because, and I think his assessing her skills is he wanted to, because we know from the book where he says that Penelope's hardly said any words at balls.
He said, I'm pretty sure that Penelope has gone whole 5-hour events where she has not muttered more than a few syllables to any gentleman. She is not known for her conversational skills. She is not known as a stellar conversationalist.
He acknowledges in the book that he must be special because she converses with him.
Yes.
And that she's comfortable with him, and he liked knowing that fact. So I think that translates here because I think that Colin, who, in my opinion, has a plan, is purposely putting her in a situation where he's telling her, I honestly think this was a Colin way of telling her she was pretty because he just says, like, he believes she's beautiful. So he just says, you can bat your eyelashes and flutter your fan. You'll get any man. Right. Like, and she's like, so I could show you. And he's like, no, not me.
Not me.
Them. Right. He's like, not me. Like, he knows she ain't ready to, like, so he introduces her and then she starts talking. That fan is going a mile a minute, reminiscent of Eloise being presented in that when she's like, give me that fan. And Wilding is like, you look discomposed. And she's like, but the whole time she's talking, Colin is looking at her like he is so amused.
I love the look. He is straining to maintain his composure.
Yes. He finds it hilarious. He wants to laugh. He's chuckling over it to himself, but he's looking at her. There is a moment where he's looking at her with such pride that I know he's like,
well, okay. And this harkens back to the book once again. And for people in the Facebook group this week who have had a go at us book readers for inserting book knowledge where it wasn't asked for it. It's like, you cannot have one without the other. They are an amalgamation. It is a Bridgerton world at this point. And so this harkens to the very specific moment in the book that we were just talking about, how, he says Penelope has gone entire balls without really speaking to anyone. And then he realizes that she is able to speak with him with absolute ease because he is one of the very few people whom she feels comfortable with. And this moment is shown in the scene that Colin thinks that Penelope will do just fine because he knows her as a stellar conversationalist, because that is all he has ever seen from her himself, because she's comfortable with him. So that is all she's ever presented to him. So he has never seen this absolutely out of place, awkward, dawdy kind of wood character, and he thinks it's hilarious.
Well, and the reason I love special. This, well, yes, very, because your girl has got magnifiers and she is reading the journals we don't hear. And hearing after what Penelope reads later, the line after that is, and I'm not going to say what the line is until we get to that scene, but basically it stems from him not feeling a connection and understanding that it's mimicking deep connection, but it's not real. And he's watching her with such pride in that moment because he's like, this girl can't fake it. Everything she's ever given me has been genuine. I have just spent months learning about women and educating myself about women, and all I learned, and I think he did that too, because Marina faked it. Marina was trying to entrap him, so that was all fake. And then he goes out into this world of learning about women, and he learns how easy it is for them to fake it in all aspects, folks. And fake it.
This is a perfect segue. Thank you for making it so easy for me, because our next scene that we have of Colin, and it is just a Colin scene, not a Polin scene, but it's a very pivotal scene to harken to the whole storyline. So we will talk about it, is we have Colin at the prostitutes. I don't know if I can say that word, whorehouse. Or what would you call it back then?
Actually, Kay gave us that. I have a whole list.
Thanks,
we have
Kay.
Regency swear words.
And I did read it the other day and I've just forgotten.
Yeah, same. Where did I put it? Okay. Adventurous.
Colin is getting his own education with the adventuresses, the den of adventure. Shall we put it?
He went to the den of adventure, and he is with some adventuresses.
He went to the den of adventuresses, and plural because, pun intended, Colin has a hole that he cannot fill without Penelope, and so he requires multiple holes to fill the one.
Well, and honestly, like there's so much talk out there in the Bridgerverse of, you know, the Phantom. We've decided we are the Phantom, that whether or not Colin had a full education before getting with Penelope or not. And we know that there was the conversation that even with the powers that be, that one wanted him to have saved himself.
Shonda wanted him to have an education, whereas Jess Brownell wanted him to be a virgin.
Wanted him to have saved himself. What we have is the scene was crafted perfectly to give whoever wants to think whatever their way of thinking, because he's in this scene. We saw Anthony pounding Sienna up against a tree.
Oh yeah, there was no room for anything, any belief other than what happened.
We've seen him in the actual act of things. We've seen Benedict in the actual act of things. I mean, he's really the rental bike of the ton at this point. He is. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sure there are many more people who would like to rent that bike.
I'm not saying I wouldn't.
I'm fond of my husband, so I enjoy viewing the bike, but I do not want to rent the bike.
Well, and I mean, I'll definitely view the bike, but I can think about renting the bike. I mean, I'm unencumbered, but Luke Thompson, you are a good looking man. That's all we're gonna say. But we see the both of them in the act. We only see Colin in a bed with these women. Yes, they are nude, but all three of them are under a different blanket. They are not under the same blanket. It's very hard to believe they would have been entangled when they're all covered by a different blanket. So I think that was purposeful to give everybody the ability to think what they want to think.
Yeah,
but
you can still receive an education without eating the whole sandwich, you know?
Correct. And the noise he makes,
we're getting real deep into it now.
The noise he makes when he connects with Penelope, knowing it's hurting her in the same moment. That's what gets me. Like and his wording there too, even was, this may hurt, that it should only be this first time. Whereas the Duke in season 1 says this will hurt. Like specific wording means something. Like he says this may hurt. He has no idea. He's heard it can. So he went to these places for an education specifically, but I think he did leave some things to the imagination, and his journals also corroborate this, which when we get to that scene, I will read that out because I'm still piecing some words together, but pretty much he went to learn about women.
We have
he wanted to be
Patty
a good lover.
P.I. Sherlock Holmes over here, absolutely sitting there. How many magnifying glasses do you have to read out these scenes at this point?
I currently have 2 magnifiers, and I have a 65-inch TV that I'm standing up against with the magnifier. And I have another one ordered that's coming tomorrow.
This is the length that we go. This is the length that we go to for you guys. Please appreciate our sacrifices.
I've had about 4 migraines this week, 4 migraines doing this.
Our physical health, our mental health.
I think it's important that they did, like, there's a lot of talk about what didn't work with this season, and people are upset about certain things with this season, but there are some things that worked really well. And I love how this scene was crafted, because we learn so much about Colin that you don't think you would learn in a brothel scene. And I know so many people are like, why would we have the brothel scenes? But here's why. We have a man who is, you can see that this connection, we'll call it a connection. This connection is very mechanical. It's like he's following an instruction manual.
Oh,
grab her thigh, kiss this one, turn, kiss this one. It's very step 1, step 2, step 3. That's one thing.
There's no true lust in it.
No, he's not even broken a sweat. Okay. He's definitely, and he's a little more unkempt. So I think he like gets to the point where he needs some sort of release, and then he goes. And in this particular case, I think like he's spending time with Penelope, he's having thoughts, and he knows he's going to be spending time with her today, so he's got to prepare to be a gentleman, because he's pretty feral.
I'm not imagining anything right now.
I'm imagining him, the reason he walked to the opposite side of that long booth table at the market. Like, I'm talking about when we met, I can't be beside this woman.
I need to be out of arm's reach of you, so that I do not just grab you and essentially mark you as my wife right in front of everyone.
Right. In front of God and everybody.
In front of God and everyone.
And everybody talks about how, like, after they get engaged, whatever, like, Colin doesn't understand personal space when it comes to Penelope. He's been doing that. So season 1,
the whole time.
when he comes up to her to talk about Lord Trowbridge in his bedtime, he is right up over her. He's towering over her. And then at the market, when he comes up, like, why is it you want a husband? He's towering. He's like, what personal space, Penelope? You don't get any.
Because
See that
he has such a need to have proximity to her.
Yes.
He is like, this is Colin's equivalent of Kate walking past and Anthony smelling the lavender on her, and he's like sniffing the lavender. This is Colin's version. He must be within close proximity to Penelope. He needs to sink in her essence.
Feel her. He feels her energy because he's an empath, because he's highly sensitive.
He absorbs her sunshine.
He absolutely feels her energy. That's why he shook her hand at the apology thing. That's why he grabbed her hand with and that is why he feels like being away from her is like years instead of months, because he wilts and dies without Penelope. Just that he's like a plant and she's
we see it with the prostitutes. Is he not just that he needs the release, but he is like searching for a connection that he isn't currently getting, that he doesn't know how Penelope feels. He doesn't know if this is ever going to lead anywhere. He doesn't know if it's reciprocated, and he's lost. And so he is searching for some sort of release because he can't have the emotional one that he needs. So he has to have a physical one. And the prostitutes is also going to be very interesting symbolism, because they're talking about how we always talk about how side stories play into the main story. And this side story, well, it will become a side story to next season, is going to play into Benedict and his encounters with multiple humans to try and fill a gap that he is missing.
Lack of connection.
And that is what Lady Tilly says. And what Lady Tilly says really feeds into this moment as well.
Well, and I think like there's really a juxtaposition there, because Benedict feels more connection the more people there are. He's polyamorous. He absolutely his mind is blown adding another person, and he even said it doesn't matter if it's male or female or whatever. Just having multiple people.
It doesn't matter if it's Patricia.
Why'd you use my name, Benedict? You just gave me thoughts. But the more people, the more energy it is. But we see the exact opposite with Colin. He needs more people because he feels less connection.
Yeah.
When he's finally connected to Penelope, that's all he needs. But when he doesn't have Penelope, he needs more. Benedict thrives on more. Like, he feels the love. He feels the connection with multiple people, whereas Colin doesn't. And what I think other things we learn about Colin, like, and these are very important things. You wouldn't think you'd learn about him from watching him with an adventuress. But what do we know about this profession? A, being the oldest profession, but B, what else do we know about this profession? If you think about not just Regency, but any time period, these are women that are looked down upon. These are women that are often men with sexual deviancies go and pay a woman, to be able to act out what is unacceptable in the home or whatever. So these women are abused. These women are forced to do things they wouldn't necessarily do. And we see in season 1, season 2, when the brothels are visited, money's thrown on the table before they walk out. It's definitely a transactional situation. But in Colin's case, we know from the second time, you have already paid.
Yes.
The payment's already done. He doesn't want to transact money within the room because he wants it to feel
authentic.
Real. And I don't want to say special or anything, but he's trying to treat these women. Yes, and I wrote in my notes, literally, like, I feel like for Colin, this is charity work, because he has learned about women. He has learned how to please women from women like this. Yeah. And he's giving them whatever time period he paid for, giving them a moment of respite from the rest of their day, where just imagine if you were working retail and you have mean customer, and then you have that one customer that is a regular, and they come in all the time and they're so sweet and they always treat you like you are an actual human being. You know what I mean? Like
the McDonald's, the McDonald's staff where I get my coffee were like, we just want to say thank you for always being our kindest customer, because I go in drive through to get, in New Zealand, we don't have drive through coffee. McDonald's is the only place that does drive through coffee.
So he pays ahead. He doesn't want it to feel transactional. He spends his whole time pleasing these women because that is what he went into this for. Colin doesn't go into this because for Colin to feel his best, I don't know how to put it really, for him to feel something, he has to be giving. He's got to be helpful. He's
for him to feel a sense of purpose, he has to be giving.
Yes. So he is a giver. So he spent the whole time with these women giving, pleasing them, allowing them rest, being kind to them. He calls them ladies.
Whereas,
who else do you think?
Whereas in the first season, when Anthony says, not everybody is a lady, and Sienna's like, oh, sorry, my lord, like
right,
complete opposite moment. Whereas Anthony looks down on those lower than him in society, but because Colin is a third brother, he thinks he's on equal footing with these people.
Well, no, I don't. And I don't even necessarily think he thinks he's on equal footing. I think that he just genuinely loves women, and he is genuinely a kind, empathetic, giving person. So in this situation where he knows he knows what the women who dealt with Anthony dealt with, right?
Yeah.
And he knows what the Lord Squad is like and how they talk about women. So he knows what these women go through, and he wants to give them a period of time of kindness and empathy. And yes, he's getting something out of it, but I don't think he went in there with the same mindset that we see Anthony going to Sienna or going to the brothel in season 2 or whatever. So he's definitely giving these women kindness.
Even at the end, when he is done with them, so many men would disregard, all right, I'm done with you, and they ask him, like, will we see you again? And he's like kind of almost flirting with them as he would any lady of the time. He goes, oh, perhaps. And then, but he uses his full etiquette, his full titled, well, he's not titled, but you know what I mean? He uses his full manners to excuse himself out of the situation. I'm really sorry. I'm late. I need to go and meet my lady, Penelope.
He treats them with the same manners that he would treat any lady at a ball.
Yeah.
He does not treat them differently.
He sees them as ladies, not as ladies of the night.
And even, and this plays into, going into the next scene, because when he's finished or they're finished and he checks the clock, unlike Anthony, who had his watch on his person looking at it, he has to look up to check the clock, and he's like acting like he just doesn't want to leave, but he's decidedly late.
The whole point, one of the big themes of the season is timing and time in general. And he looks at the clock and he says, I'm late. And I think it's one of those symbolistic it's one of those moments of symbolism that I can't be here playing around. Penelope is waiting for me. I'm going to run out of time with her. Like, I need to,
Well, and the idea of being late has been used in that essence even since season 2, or season 1, Anthony's late to Daphne's thing, and Violet calls him out for being late. And then in season 2, when, Gregory comes to him about the Latin teacher and he talks about their dad, and he's like, I've shown up late to a lot of things I shouldn't have.
Yes.
And we know when Colin gives his gifts, he gives his mother the watch, which we're going to talk about that with themes, because the family is always late. We are always late, and he's giving her that watch. And a part of it is, it's my time. You can now do whatever, because I honestly believe that the true caregiver of the family after Edmund passed really was Colin at 12 years old, because the brothers were off to school.
He was the emotional caregiver. So Anthony had the role of being man of the house, but he did not, and he even admits this with Gregory, is he was not the emotional man of the house. He did not emotionally take care of them at all. That fell upon Colin, and that is a heavy burden to carry. And this is interesting because I just actually read this part in the book where Colin is trying to say, oh, my life is so hard done by. And Penelope brings up, like, your brother not only is head of the family, but he also feels responsible for the family, and what a heavy burden that is. Whereas they've kind of given that role to Colin, where he feels emotionally responsible for a lot of his family members, and he feels responsible for uplifting everyone's spirits, of being the lighthearted one, of being the jovial one, of being the charming one, because that is what he needed to be to keep his family happy. Yeah. So Colin has definitely felt like he has wore the emotional burden of raising his family.
Yeah. His brothers were both off to school, so he would have been the oldest. Daphne was the oldest girl. They definitely would have been the parents, and Violet was it having all of that grief, and that lasted for a long time. So that is, Colin's got the belief system that he's got to save the day. He's got to be that emotional sounding board for everyone. He's got to keep everyone in good spirits. And I find it funny that if you look at all the scripting, and if anybody can point out this to me, that, and I'm mistaken, but I was just thinking about how they talk, like Colin talks all the time about high spirits, low spirits. Like that is definitely a Colin thing. Like I'm in high spirits. And I think that that's important that he's the one who always says that, because he is truly the emotional regulator of the family. Like Benedict is they say Benedict is the heart of the family because he's so open and he's so loving to everybody. But Colin was the person, he was the emotional regulator for everyone. Like if you were feeling low, Colin did whatever he could to make you feel better. Yeah. And he's always put other people first. And that's so important for his arc this season. And you have to see it, like the brothel scene, as much as I hated seeing him in that situation, because
it was confronting for us, but it was needed. And the funny thing,
it was needed.
Yeah. So the funny thing is, you know, we talk about timing, and I think he's afraid of being late because being late is also to upset other people, and he cannot bear to ever upset anyone. So he skedaddles to go meet Penelope at the markets, and he's so worried about being late, but he still beats her there.
I think that's so important, because I think he knows his idea of being late is not missing her. It's not getting there after her. He wants to get there before her. He wants to be in place. He wants to watch her walk in or walk up to him. Like it's important to him. And not only that, but if you look at the brothel scene, boy is unshaved. He's got 5 o'clock shadow. He definitely, he is completely clean shaven. Hair's all done, all dressed up.
Do not think for a second that Colin would ever feel okay, because I think at this point he has even acknowledged that he has feelings for her. I don't think that he would ever feel okay going to spend time with Penelope, having the scent of other women, the taste, the smell, the salt of everything of other women on him. He could not bear for her to see him in that state.
Right. And talking about shadow Colin versus authentic Colin, like I feel like he goes into these situations as shadow Colin. Like he is that other person. He has created this other personality, and he absolutely is not Colin in that room, if that makes sense. Like it's not Colin with those adventuresses. Yes, he disassociates. He went into this mainly to get an education, partially because that's what his brother said he needed to do, and he remembers that, but it ends up being useful later. Penelope thanks you, Colin. So yeah, it was all worth it. It was a good education. So, but yeah, we see a different man in that brothel with those women. As kind as he is, we can see snippets of real authentic Colin, but we also see a man who's struggling, who's lost, not shaven. I mean, he went there before even getting ready for the day, really.
Yeah. So so he obviously has showered, he's tidied himself up, he has made himself presentable to meet Penelope. And I love that the scene they give us, one of the moments from the book, because I mean, we actually get more moments from the book than what I recalled. Like when I read the book originally and then I watched the first season, it had been so long since I had read the book that I felt like they were skipping so many parts, but they actually have sprinkled them through, but they've just sometimes changed up where those scenes and those conversations and those quotes have taken place, but they are there. And we will do an episode at some point making all the connections between the books and some of the differences and some of the things that we wish had been put in.
Well, and I think a lot of the books, there's a lot of book stuff, but it's more conceptual too. Like how we can piece together that whole thought process, because Colin in the book is very much inner monologue. Yes. So a lot of what you see as a book reader, you have to equate it to a thought process that Colin had in the book. But yeah, we do get certain scenes that are pretty close. But they just might happen in a different location or what have you.
This entire scene is very Polin-centric and very Colin-centric, because as they walk through, so they meet each other, and as they start walking through the markets together, I have actually clocked quite a few different busts and statues and things throughout the markets, and even the flowers. Like every single thing that is put into Bridgerton has a meaning, has a symbolism behind it, whether you notice it or not. So at the start, when they start their discussion, they are standing in front of a statue of Hera, which is the goddess of women, marriage, and childbirth. Isn't that interesting? Because that is a foreshadowing of what is to come. And we all know that Colin has an absolute affinity for Greece and Greek goddesses. And then from there, they move forwards and they are standing in front of a statue of Eros and Psyche. And for anyone who has listened to the very, very first episode that I ever made was on Eros and Psyche, and you would know the whole connections there. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, go back and listen to the very first, as we now call it, a bonus episode. So from there, they continue moving on and through the markets. And this is the point in which Colin tells the story of how they first met. And I love that it even includes yellow. And this is one of the book scenes. This is, ripped straight out of the book, although they changed the ending slightly.
In the book, yes, the scene is out of the book, but just to be clear, because I love this change in the show.
Yes.
Penelope remembers how they met. Penelope at the beginning of the book talks about how she met Colin and she fell in love with him on the day she met him.
Yes.
But when Colin remembers, like when he's thinking about it, he can't even remember the day they met. But mind you, Colin in the book is 33 and it's been a long time, but he can't remember. So
they met 16 years ago at that point, because they met when she was 17.
When she was almost 16. It was the day before her 16th birthday. Yeah.
17 years.
But in this show, the thought process, because they never actually say, but the assumption is it's after Edmund's death. So it's been about 10, 11 years, which would put her at 9 or 10 years old, we'll say. If it's 9 to 10, 11 years,
which would
she
make
would have been
sense
9 or 10 years old.
Which would make sense for him to be on a horse riding, because if he was
he would have been about younger. 13. 12 or 13. And they were racing through the park. But that's the change I love. Like there are some things from the book that bothered me about book Colin, and one of those is and I understand, he traveled, like when he traveled in the book, he was gone for years at a time, not months, years. So he didn't see Penelope because they could not write letters. You don't write letters to an unmarried person. If you are unmarried, you just don't, because you are considered an eligible suitor.
Well, and not only that, but he also said that in the books, he didn't know where he was going to be. So he's talking to Lady Featherington, and, he's kind of recounting, and also when he's having his discussion with Anthony, and he says, he does feel a bit bad about the fact that his family goes sometimes months at a time without a missive from him, and to them, he could be dead, he could be anywhere, and they have no idea.
Yeah.
So he does say, it is hard to get letters out to my family, and so sometimes they go months without hearing from me.
Right. So he was gone for a long time and he couldn't write to Penelope at all, because in real life, in Regency era, you do not write letters to someone that you are not married to, which is another reason why it's a huge big deal that Colin wrote to her first. And we know Colin wrote to her first because of the way she brings it up. Colin has kept me apprised of his travels. Colin wrote her first and then she wrote him back. So there's no way in HE double hockey sticks that Penelope Featherington, even on the show, would have even thought to write Colin Bridgerton when he was traveling. Never. Colin wrote her first. So I love in the show that they have Colin remember, and Colin's the one who brings it up. And I love that because I think that these are the symbols and allusions that we get that Colin has had these feelings all this time too. Like everybody, all the book fans, and I think it's mostly book fans who are of the school of thought, really, that Colin didn't know until he knew. Like the kiss is when he figured it out. Or, a lot of people say the glow up or whatever. And it's not. I absolutely love the fact that the show has built up his feelings just as much as hers, if you know how to look, because we always are Penelope centric. Season 1, season 2, because she's Whistledown, it's always been Penelope's point of view. And I think especially these first 4 episodes are very much Colin's point of view. It's like the whole season 1, season 2 arc of having feelings, being afraid to say anything about the feelings, wondering what it like. And I don't even think she really wondered if Colin ever liked her. She really didn't think he would. And I think Colin goes through that same thing. Like there's a lot of reasons why he would not be the best match. And we see now, like, him bringing up the way he brings up how they met is pretty much identical. I mean, it's worded differently because he doesn't want it to be the same for Penelope, which I think is like, how can you say you love someone in a moment without saying you love someone? I'm going to tell this story, but I'm going to tell it differently so that it's still exciting for you, because I've already told you this story.
Let me remind you the story of our connection, of how we first met, that first inkling of connection.
Right. And in this time, he's trying to make it seem like he remembers a time. And I think this is important, because what is he trying to teach her? He's trying to teach her charm. What do you need charm for? You need charm to be able to flirt so that you can court, so that you can get married. Mm-hmm. And he is out and out telling her, I know you can do this. How do I know? Do you remember when we met? The first day we met, you are a natural. You were teasing me mercilessly. And I think as the post-park scene, this is next. So his process, if you look at his process, like if Colin was the villain, and you know how the villain always has to tell you their plan at some point in a movie. So if Colin was telling you his plan, he would say, step one, I am going to put her in a situation where she feels so awkward and she realizes that she just is awkward with everyone in the world. But then I'm going to step two, I'm going to have her be with me, and I'm going to have her realize that she can be comfortable with me. And then step three is we're going to get alone together and she's going to tell me how she feels. Like, I really think that's his thought process, because he needs to know how she feels, because he's very similar to Eloise. And Eloise says in season 2, my feelings do not matter until I know his. And I think Colin is very much the same way. His feelings do not matter until he knows what Penelope feels, because he doesn't want to lose the friendship. And he could not even think of hurting her in such a way to say he has feelings for her when she doesn't have feelings for him, because he's never going to think about his own broken heart. He's going to wonder how he's making her feel.
And I think at the time as well, he's also concerned about, obviously, the relationship going on with Eloise and Penelope. And in the next scene, well, not next scene, but like as they're walking through the market, and he asks her, where is it that she feels most comfortable? And I love this wee bit, because we have Penelope talking about where she feels most comfortable, and she's talking about the Bridgerton house. And I think that's another reminder for him that she is already part of the family, and not in a biological way, but that she will slot straight into the family. Like, she will fit in seamlessly if only her and Eloise can, get their stuff together and sort it out. But in the moment that they're talking about it, Penelope is fiddling with a gerbera daisy. And so I looked up exactly what the meaning of a yellow gerbera daisy is, and they symbolize friendship and happiness, which I thought was like a cute little, like, this is where Penelope feels most comfortable, is friendship and happiness. And that is what the Bridgerton family mean for her.
Well, and again, like when we were talking about Benedict asking Eloise, who is your favorite brother or sister? And I really do feel like he expected her to say him. I think in this moment, because she is on the outs with Eloise, I think that he was asking her what makes you feel most comfortable, not where. She gave a where. He said, what makes you feel most comfortable? And his whole build up here, telling the story of how they met, and in such a way that it does sound like before I saw the second half, I said it sounds like a speech at an engagement party. It sounds like Hugh Grant in Bridget Jones when she's dreaming up their engagement party in the future. And he's like, it all started with her saucy little skirt. It is the same vibe. And Luke Newton gives Hugh Grant so much.
Don't you dare compare the two. Look at me. Like, you guys can't see, but I'm throwing my coat. Like, how dare you?
For whatever Hugh Grant is in his personal life and as a person himself, he does rom-com well.
He does, but he irritates me. So not a fan. Let's go back to my boy Colin, because that is
right. But he's super charming. And I think it's important, like, he walks to the opposite side of the table. I think that's important. Like, he wants to do this, but he's afraid. I think he's afraid that if he's standing in close proximity with her, that he's going to reveal himself, and he doesn't want to. Two, when he's telling the story, he starts out with, like, he does say, remember the day we met. But then when he gets to the point where he's like, you tease me mercilessly, in fact, and I know why? And she turns like that whole story part. But then when he talks about at this point, like the whole story is I was riding my horse and minding my own business, very singular, and you teased me mercilessly, very much you. So you, separate entities. But as soon as he talks about why it was easy for her in that moment, it became we. We were children. We had not dealt with adulthood and the judgment of others, and we didn't care what people thought. So he is talking about, like, I think that is his illusion of trying to find the best word to use, but that's him kind of letting her know, hey, we both understood when we became eligible for marriage that the each
there
other
was a consciousness that came with it.
There's a consciousness, yes. When we're children, when we're able to be in each other's proximity and we're able to have feelings for each other unencumbered because we're children and nobody's thinking about us as marriageable material, but we both understood the assignment when we came into society, what our parents expected of us, what our families expected of us. And we knew, whatever our affections were for each other, whatever our relationship was with each other, we both tamped it down. Like he's very much a weeing this. Like we both knew this might not be what our families wanted. And I don't think he's talking about the ton at all here. I very much think he's talking about, because especially when he says, when I go on my travels and when I was abroad, I learned I could be whatever I wanted to be. I was not the Colin Bridgerton the ton expected me to be. And did the ton really expect Colin Bridgerton to be anything? No. Who expected Colin Bridgerton to be anything?
Anthony.
And
that's when he says, living for the estimation of others is a trap. It is very much Anthony who has expectations and who he feels the most pressure from in the ton, but also Eloise, because he knows at the end of the day, Eloise and Penelope are best friends and they may be temporarily separated, but he knows it is never going to be forever. And he knows whatever they're going through is just a little spat. And I love that every single, like, Colin is a secret little gossip worm, because every single chance he gets with Penelope and Eloise, he's like, so what happened? Where's the goss? I'm getting out the tea.
Well, he is and he isn't, because I think that he came back, found out they weren't friends, and
he needs to fix it.
He needs to fix it. Why? Because he wants to bring Penelope into the family as family. And if they're on the outs, that makes it harder. And he doesn't want to deal with what he dealt with in season 1 with Anthony, so he wants everybody to accept her. And right now, the only person, he's worried about Anthony, but Anthony's in and out, Hogwarts and all. And Eloise, he does have to fix it. Like he feels like he has to, but I think in the carriage scene when they're driving to the whatever ball that is, we still don't know the name of it.
Celestial.
The Celestial, the one that's all the celestial. Everybody's wearing stars, and moons, and stuff. She says we've grown apart. He's officially frustrated with that excuse, and he out and out asks, "Do you want me to cast her out?" And when she says, "No, I don't want her to be friendless," and you're maybe all she has right now. If you watch him, he has this little smile.
But speaking of little smiles, because you need to stop. This is going to be a future episode. I know. But speaking of little smiles, I love that when he is asking these questions and Penelope is like, "Oh, how do I get out of this question?" Ray immediately in with the slide. She is like, "I got you, girl. I'm getting you out of here." She gives Penelope a look. That is an out. Hey, we need to get out of here. And Penelope gets to use the, "Oh, I must go before we are seen together." Like, "Oh, I wouldn't want you to be embarrassed being seen with me." And he's like, "Please, please, people, look at us. See us together."
And that's the thing. I don't think that the way he acts about that, and Ray smiles up at him, and then he actually, like, in our Facebook group for the podcast, I have that depiction of all the frames, and you see the surprised look on his face first, like the realization. I think that is the first moment since he got home that she has ever, in fact, probably in all of the seasons, truly, that she has registered that it would be not great if they're seen together. And he knows that that is a transition. That
I think Ray
she
100%
sees.
knows that they are courting. Like, she's like, you guys may not see it, but I see it.
Well, and she smiles at him because she's like, did you clock that? But she's like, did you clock that? She said, so we, because we may be noticed. Well, why does a woman say that? Because not because she's worried about him being embarrassed of her anymore. He already told her he's not ashamed of her. It's because she is officially out and out said they could assume we are courting.
Yeah.
You are eligible. I am eligible. And that's the first time she's ever
yelling
said
at my name.
That's the first time she said anything like that in a sentence out loud in front of Colin Bridgerton. And he is like, yes.
So today, gentle listeners, we are going to leave it there and continue on next week's episode, where we will get to talk about the marriage lessons at the Bridgerton house, as well as Colin's journal. If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover, or any Bridgerton knowledge that you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. If you are enjoying our podcast, please remember to click the follow button on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you are listening. Once again, thank you for listening to the musings of two mad women. Yours truly, Tash the Kiwi.
And Lady Patty.